Watch yourself. Ryan's stirring. We best keep to our knitting. It's time to either run the table or go home empty. Ryan's got the genetic key to Rapture. We get that from him, and we get out of this hellhole. We don't, then you and I are ghosts. Now would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this.
I see Cohen's lost his touch.
I know what you're
He used to believe work in the struggle. And now, he walks on that Neverland, waiting for someone to come and tell him he still got it. I suppose that's why he let you live. You can taste it, can't you? Andrew Ryan.
Futuristics. He owns it now, lock, stock and barrel. For the good of the city, he says. He'll break it up in due time, he says. I've resigned from the council and lodged me letter of protest, but that's just pissing in the wind. It'll be war, I say, unless somebody stops Ryan, and right fast. The worm looks up and sees the face of God. But look around. It's a regular convention of worms in here. They all had mothers, fathers, people who loved them. They got married, got their wives. What makes you think you're any different? I haven't chosen the spot for you on the wall yet. Let me know if you have a preference.
I had to go jungle style with that filthy man for 3 weeks, but he finally spilled the beans on how to get to Amkin. Generate a sympathetic overload in harmonic core number 3. That's simple. Now all I gotta do is figure out what the hell a sympathetic overload is, and for that matter, a harmonic core number 3. Piece of cake for an electrical engineer. Too bad I designed ladies' shoes. Gonna go see the grease monkeys left alive in heat loss monitoring. See what I can shake out of their trees.
Like all parasites who ever tried to walk in stolen shoes. I'd explain the science that renders what you're trying to do impossible, but that would be like playing Mozart for a tree frog.
I never killed a man, let alone a mate. But this is what things come to. I don't know if killing Mr. Ryan will stop the war, but I know it won't stop while that man breathes. I love Mr. Ryan, but I love Ratchet. If I have to kill one to save the other, so be it. Rapture is coming back to life. Even now, can't you hear the breath returning to her lungs? The shops reopening, the schools humming with the thoughts of young minds. My city will live. My city will thrive. And when that day comes, we'll use your tombstone for pavement tiles.
What is the difference between a man and a parasite? A man builds, a parasite asks, where's my share? A man creates, a parasite says, what will the neighbors think? A man invents, a parasite says, watch out, or you might tread on the toes of them.
And his parasites. Rapture is on the rise.
What's under the suit?
Fontaine wasn't overly inconvenienced by his own demise. On New Year's Eve, these wretched splicers come streaming out of the poorhouses and stormed the proverbial barricades. The dead rot in the streets. Johnny and Janie Citizen are lined up round the block for plasmids. Anything to help fend off the rabble.
I traded you all for that. And what did it get me, huh? I wore it for you, Father. Tonight.
Do you guys have any idea there's a war on? If you don't follow proper maintenance of those big daddies, they burn through those R-34s like them Eve's apple berries go through penicillin. I've got Atlas's goons hitting us non-stop and 2 dead mechanics just this week. We need to control costs. If I wanted to deal with amateurs, I would have stayed on dry land.
Strikes me that Fontaine wasn't overly inconvenienced by his own demise. On New Year's Eve, these wretched splicers come streaming out of the poorhouses and stormed the proverbial barricades. The dead rot in the streets, and Johnny and Janie's citizen are lined up round the block for plasmids. Anything to help fend off the rabble.
That's right! Nothing you are! They sent you, didn't they?
Imagine the will it took to create a place like this. And what have you built? Nothing. You could only loot and break. You're not a man. You're just a termite adversary.
Let me tell you something about keyboards and all the university types. They're so smart, except when they ain't. I put a couple of drinks in him last week, and before I could say boo, he's telling me he's got the code to his office keyed to the date of Australia Day. Now's every week I slip in real gentle and nick a buck or 2 from the till. The Aussie never notices, and I ain't about to tell him. Seems like there's all kind of crazy stuff back there. Maybe one day I'll get more ambitious.
Such terrible things, and done worse myself. Thank you for reminding me that the light of the world has not yet been snuffed out. I am sending a little one to help you on your way.
You you devil!
I'm ready for dream time, Mr. Bubbles.
I didn't recognize the twist that come into the shop today. Stacked like Sally and dressed to the nines. She's played her cards pretty close to the vest, but you ain't gotta be no college job to see that she's into some bad china. She was asking about magnetic locks and some such. I played it coy, but she took wise. After she showed me round her backyard, I gave her directions to Keyboard's tool shop. Rapture's gone to hell, but sometimes the great change still cuts you a break.
the final rat has eaten the last gram of you, Rapture will have returned. I will lead a parade. Who was that, they'll say, as they point to the sad shape hanging on my wall. Who was that?
We have turned away from your light. You ungrateful.
Bienvenido al amor libre. Loading arrow, no ammo.
I'm sorry, Father. I'll do what you say.
What a balmy dream. Some kind of fruit tree spinning like a top. And it was pouring juice down Ryan's throat, choking the bastard. But it wasn't a tree, really. When I looked closer, it was the core control. The gizmo that feeds the maglocks on Ryan's gate. You can't cut off the power. Comes right from the volcanic vents. Ryan always gets his juice. But I suppose you could drown the son of a bitch in it. The basic casing is ready. I've one charge of nitroglycerin in my office. That will serve as the catalyst. Now,
From the moment you boot up BioShock, you can feel the story grab hold of you. A plane crashes at sea, a mysterious lighthouse, a sprawling city beneath the ocean. Hooking the player from the first touch without overwhelming him with convoluted RPG mechanics was key to the success of the game and the skillful ramping up of BioShock's legendary gameplay. BioShock has an amazing opening sequence that I can't imagine the game without it, with the plane and sort of the crash. But I understand that didn't come online until like the very end of development. Sean, is that true?
We had a couple of really depressing playtests. We had built all these systems. We thought we were doing a good job of like giving basically people a playground to play with and things to do. And when we had a playtest, we didn't realize how bad of a job we were doing in exposing those systems to the player, because we were so in these systems and in our own heads, we had no idea that we just weren't facing them towards the player at all. So after that playtest, we took a long, cold look at what we were doing and realized that we had to introduce we were confident enough in the systems that they were going to be fun and meaningful to the player, but we really had to think about how we were going to introduce these systems to the player, and in such a way that they understand why the systems were there. Like, you can't ship a README file with the game and expect people to read it. Like, it has to be part of the experience. So the challenge is, how do you introduce people to these systems, but do it in such a way that it fits within the narrative? So we had to integrate all of these things into the story cleanly so that the player felt like it was one smooth experience. And I think the zap 'em and whack 'em thing was one of those.
And the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, the 1-2 punch that came out of that.
The plane sequence at the beginning, I heard a story that like a programmer put that together in like a day or two, and it was a very last minute thing, right?
It was, so we had done a focus test, and we had it was one of the most depressing experiences in my life, because we were very close to being finished, and it was basically giving people what essentially became the demo, and people played it, and and it was in Boston, and we were sort of behind these glass windows, all these sort of Boston guys like, this is a wicked piece of shit. You know, they hated it, and they were making fun of it, and they were saying, it's like watching some guys and dolls getting, beating each other up, and it's the stupidest thing they've ever seen. And we thought we were in pretty good shape at that point. And I remember the focus test guy was like sort of like a doctor giving me the bad news. You know, sorry, Ken, you better get your affairs in order. Right. And we all came into work the next day, and we were like, what are we going to do? And we were all pretty depressed. But I think we started talking. And as we talked, we started thinking about, what are they saying to us? What are these people saying to us? We think there's something there. How are they missing it? And we decided that maybe they didn't understand who they were and who their role as a character, who their role in the world was, because the game at that point started with you in the ocean, floating in the ocean after the plane crash. And
the crash still was in the fiction, it just wouldn't show it.
You just didn't see it, so you didn't have the voiceover saying, my parents always said I was going to do great things or whatever that. They didn't show the plane crash. We didn't establish a time period. Because the plane is critical to establishing. You're smoking a cigarette. It's very 1960s looking. All that stuff was established. It wasn't established. So we decided we had no time and no money and so we sort of came up with a script. I wrote some lines, a line, I think. Nate, one of our artists, recorded the line. Steven and Sean and those guys got to work on building this very simple sequence, which was relatively simple sequence. And then the plane crash actually happens over the BioShock logo we already had. But we wrote a radio play behind that with, altitude of the crash. And that, I think, set the emotional, and the people screaming in terror on the plane crash, that set the emotional tenor much better and explained who the player was. And all of a sudden, we released, then I think the next real encounter we had was people playing the demo, public encounter, and all of a sudden it was a very different experience.
No, I remember even back in the day, I think we did a thing on TV where you kind of talked about it, and it was like that night, and I remember that night, like, people on the forums were just like going nuts. And even though the game had a lot of press attention, when people finally got to play it and go through that sequence, I just remember there was this mass sort of excitement around it, and then the game shipped only a few weeks after that, right, or a month after that?
A week later, or a few days later.
It's amazing, like, now to hear that, like, literally like a month before the game came out, like the plane sequence came online or something. I mean, it was that late. Right?
Well, we still had to go through certification and all that.
Yeah, so it's like within,
It wasn't far. It wasn't far. It was really last minute. And it was one of those things where, like, you really shouldn't be putting in content that late. Yeah. But we felt we were so close to having something good that we just rolled the dice on it, and we worked really hard on it. Like, we worked really hard. I remember how much time I spent on just that recorded of altitude. I can still hear the different version of that in my head, because we spent so much time on that stuff, and these guys were working on getting the animations right. And the
scene was shot in engine, but we decided to pre-render it so that we had to do less QA on it.
Right.
It wasn't going to be some like weird streaming error or crash error. Wow. It was just like, we're just going to show the video,
And it's interesting, because once you start in the ocean, we had this experience of testing a lot with the water effects and how beautiful Steven's water effects were. People didn't realize they were out of a cutscene at that point. And so they would just sit there and stare, and then they pick up the controller. And they pick up the controller, and all of a sudden they realize they were controlling things. But that, as Sean said, that part of the plane is not actually interactive. It was done in the engine, but we just filmed it.
Now, as people were playing through the game and you were testing it, I'm sure there was debate about, when would you introduce these plasmids, what would the ramp be? Did that change at all, sort of as you got towards the end of development, about like, we're going to give people the gun at this point, or it's like, we're going to trigger these plasmids at this point? Like, how did that work?
So, like, we moved guns around. Like, for instance, there was a big debate about, originally you found a gun in the lighthouse, a pistol in the lighthouse.
Oh,
at the very
right
beginning.
there,
And because it's a shooter, right? Like, what the hell? And we had a lot of debates about it, and I feel that it was important that we didn't do that, because the fact that you sort of go through a lot of the experience without having the distraction of a gun is important to getting you immersed in the world. Because when you have all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? But you don't have the hammer, so you just sort of had to take in the world and have that feeling of fear. And like, I know when you saw that splicer bounding around on the ceiling, that you couldn't do anything about it, and that had even though that's
those are those moments, right? Like, I remember when I played Unreal for the first time, where it's like you're trapped and there's a monster and you can't do it, and the lights go out. It's like that's the moment with the splicer where you're like, I want to do something but I can't, and that evokes an emotion.
I remember we kept, moving where the machine gun appeared around and where various plasmids appeared around. It was a real, it's a real fine-tuning process.
Yeah, and it gave us an opportunity, like especially with the shotgun, to really present the weapons, like put some space between them.
It's a moment when you finally.
Yeah, I think
we
like
get the shotgun Paul sequence.
Paul Hellquist was he put the sequence together for the when you see the shotgun laying in the pool of light. Like every game developer knows what that means. You know the minute you pick that thing up, something's going to happen. But it was still a very effective way, as I'm remembering it, to look, I've been waiting for this thing. I'm going to pick it up, and now you have an immediate opportunity to use it. But at the same time, we're trying to ramp up the tension level by having the splicers kind of on the outside of the light, so you can't really see them, and then coming in one at a time and attacking you.
Yeah. And we had very few tools to really control how the splicers acted. So how they were set up and how the environment was lit was really important.
There's even other things like when you get the TK plasmid, I don't think we had a lot of physical space and opportunity and time to really present that. So we came up with the narrative that, it was the doctor's office and he used TK to practice tennis. And we had the turret in there that threw tennis balls at you. So if you wanted to, you could catch the tennis balls and throw them, and you could knock things down. I think it revealed pickups that you could then, pull to yourself with TK. But we're always trying to think of like little backstories that we could do. It doesn't have to be as involved as the shotgun ambush. Sometimes it's just, let's take a grenade turret and turn it into a tennis ball turret.
Because we want to, because I remember like the impulse was, I've been to dentist office, and there's always some like weird aspect of the dentist personality they always want to get through their office. They always have to have their hobby featured in some way, and so we saw an opportunity there to both feature this, he's a tennis nut, and teach TK at the same time.
And the
Need a 4R34 lead shield wire stubs to pass the circuit. Then a half can of ionic gel, that's the pretty Betty of the mix. Should send the core into compensation mode, push power down the line and trigger the circuit breaker on Ryan's gate. Well, that's the theory. It'll either work like a charm, or blow up half of Rapture. Nothing ventured.
Go out and fight me, you bastard!
I got my eye on all of them.
How sweet the song. Save a wretch like me.
I'll go there soon with Mr. Bubbles! Perhaps we'll dine on ham and jammy if we can't find the lily pop. My bill is full. Street, street, street.
if I'm wrong. An innocent girl will end up on Ryan's bloody trophy wall. If I'm right, well, I'd best be right. The device is almost finished. I can't get soft now, I can't.
He's got a gun! He's got a gun! From your light.
builds a city at the bottom of the sea. That's a marvel. Another man happens to be on a plane that crash lands on the same city in the middle of the ocean. Why, that sounds more like a miracle.
will execute judgment! Ah! I could not...
Fishman, are you there, little child?
And what did it get me, huh?
I heard that.
Sinners, hide in the shadows.
Hmm?
To build a city at the bottom of the sea, insanity. But where else could we be free from the clutching hand of the parasites? Where else could we build an economy that they would not try to control, a society that they would not try to destroy? It was not impossible to build rapture at the bottom of the sea. It was impossible to build it anywhere else.
Jesus loves me. This thought we could hide from His light shineth even down here in the murk.